Hello and welcome everyone to the weekly Delphian meeting. Thank you for tuning in. So today we got Shawn back. So he can tell you guys how Iceland was. So the agenda for today, we'll go through the market update as usual, first off, and then I'm going to go through because there was questions about going in and retesting or modifying the testing for earnings trades. So I'll go walk through that for people. And then Shawn's going to go through and give us updates on earnings trades and things that are going on out there in earnings world. So that's the agenda. Let's get rolling. Okay, so from last week, obviously we've had some, all the indices are still state one. We've had a pretty big move. Sorry, muting. Pretty big move in state one. So now we are actually up at above 45%, which is, technically right about the line where we're saying things are overbought. So it's just kind of like a caution sign overall for the market. Once we get up there, obviously it can run up higher, but at this point, it's signaling overbought as far as that state one indicator. Still relatively high on the state eights, but overall this pie, obviously grew quite a bit, and we're up in 60% bullish right now. So over 60. So pretty big move overall. So you can see, last time we got up around 46 when things turned over. There was 42. Yeah, we had this kind of once in a decade kind of craziness here where we got up to, I don't know if it's once a decade, but, very infrequently where we had that kind of market. But, back in the past, they're 40, 45, 44 kind of range where things like the turnover. So that's our typical kind of range. Just kind of think of it like state modeling, like something goes into state one, we have the average move. So that's kind of what we plan for. I'd take the same kind of approach where, like, when we get above these, these indicators saying, okay, yeah, we're slightly overbought right now. Nothing going on here yet. As far as the new lows, we're still pretty much flatline there. So nothing really to talk about there. Bullish, bearish, just a quick glimpse. Yeah, so we got that crossover. Yeah, we're up pretty high right now, 63. I don't really have levels on this. I use this for my oversold. When we get the bullish around 30, that's kind of like the oversold. I don't really have one up on the top. I kind of use state one for the for the overbought, and then I use the bullish, the low there for the oversold. That's kind of how I look at these things. So so basically it's telling us we're in the overbought, just breached, the overbought range. As far as, the individual indices and state modeling, obviously good start here for SPX. We got target one. So, we have our normal path of things that go up, down, and then up. So that's kind of like the normal path. So it's a good start, obviously, for SPX. That one's been chugging along. So no reason not to think it's not going to follow kind of the normal path. I'm not saying it gets like right up to this. It can roll over a little bit before that, but typically it's right around that area. So so that's SPX. Obviously, the key levels here are the entry price 44, just call it 44.90, and then 46.60. That's your kind of near-term resistance and support. If we look at we reclaimed the 50 days, so I'm going to just go back to that as another key support level, 44.50 would be that level, which is right below the entry price here. So if we follow the normal pattern, we'll get up here, we'll kind of test the entry price, maybe even that SMA, and then we should run back up after that. So just that's kind of the normal path that we can expect there, which is, SPX, NDX have been doing a good job following that. On the other hand, Russell hasn't been performing well in state ones, and I expect that to continue for near term while we're in this long-term channel. So, fairly decent start, obviously. But as you can see back here, just while we're in this channel since February, you can see these state ones just haven't performed. Little pop, rollover, little pop, rollover, try again, rollover. Pretty much same story every time. So we've had a little pop, and if it's any indication of how this has been during this channel time, I'd expect it to roll over again. And stay within that channel until we get something, some kind of impetus to get this out of the channel. But until then, I talked about last week. I think where were we? I think right around here. So I think we're about at that same area. 2274. So it tried, and I think it's down pretty good today, while SPX is flat. So this one's just been doing the same thing over and over, for 8 months, over 8 months, just channeling. So that's kind of where things are. Is that and NDX. Kind of similar to SPX. Excuse me. So nothing really different here as far as the other one. So the other thing, just want to pull up, we talked last week about just kind of looking at, the MACD stochastic. So I pulled up like IWM. So this one, obviously started rolling over, which is very, and this is on a daily basis. So obviously a bearish sign there. If you look at like the weekly, so it's been trending lower, as far as the MACD, and just kind of whips on back and forth on stochastic. So it seems like it's trying to approach, like a MACD crossover, but it just doesn't, that'll take a while, I think. So you just kind of go off the near term, the daily chart, which doesn't look good as far as near term, where it kind of peaked out and everything, both things rolled over simultaneously. So, SPY's a little different. So it basically peaked out on the stochastics. We're still kind of rolling here. So, if you go back and just kind of look at it, can stay up here for quite a while. So we don't know when it will roll over. So this is definitely near term, more bullish than IWM, which looks ugly. As far as on a weekly basis, this is a good sign where the weekly stochastic rolled up. If we get a crossover for the MACD up higher, obviously that's very bullish. Once it tries to gets near kind of crossing over, that's when you're going to get a lot of resistance to the downside, and that's kind of a key time to watch as far as this weekly. But the weeklies just kind of give you a longer term picture, and you can always go out to monthlies too if you want. These are just a lot more slow moving, just kind of depending on your time frame. I normally kind of look at put the most priority on the dailies on those. So okay, so that was the overall market. Just crossed the overbought line in the sand. So Any questions or comments on that?
I mean, Josh,
Yeah. Hey, bro.
is there any particular industry that is better than any other ones, like transportation or finance? Since we're having the transportation issues, that transportation is rising quicker than anyone else.
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't drilled down to like an individual sector. I guess I could probably start incorporating that, expand my market overview by quite a bit. But yeah, I haven't done an individual analysis on that. I think, kind of what we just walked through with, the SPX, the Russell, you can do that on every, sector down there below. Obviously, oil's been, chugging along, and I think the financials also have been pretty strong overall, but, they're all pretty much, they're all bullish right now, but yeah, but I haven't done the granular on the sectors, but yeah, you guys are more than welcome to, do. I think you guys can mimic the kind of same thing that I do as far as the modeling for each one of those. But yeah, we can look at incorporating something like that in the future.
So you could go back to the pulse and just change the sector, right?
Yeah, should be able to. Let's do oil, energy. And then, if you change sectors, I would also change to the corresponding ETF for it. So XLE is the energy. So I haven't done the same kind of analysis I've done for the whole market in SPY as, for each one of these. But, you guys, like I said, you guys can do the same, kind of thing that we've been noticing. The same analysis I do for the other one, you can apply on the sector basis too. This is overall bullish, bearish, and it definitely, you get that crossover, look like definitely ran pretty strong. But yeah, I would do the same thing, for each one of those sectors. And you can see here the state ones and the energy have just like taken off, corresponding run up. I mean, this this pretty much mimics exactly the stock movement, right? The state one. I haven't seen anything like that. So this one's doing a pretty good job. So I would do that for the individual sectors that you're interested in too. You can apply exactly what we do for SPX, SPY, or whatever on the big one to these. So this one's obviously been strong. Like, does that answer your question, Russ?
Sure, but you can't do it for a particular industry, right?
Hmm?
But you can't do it for a particular industry, right?
No, you can only go down on a sector level. You can't do like semiconductors. We haven't built that functionality. It might be too much, but maybe down to the industry level we could look at doing. Is there a specific industry you're looking for?
Well, I know that quite a few people look at the semiconductors and see how well they're doing, along with maybe transportation and also finance.
Yeah. Well, if Dave's real nice, maybe we'll put that in so he can do his semiconductor. I know he's a huge follower of that. So okay, yeah, we'll take that and see what we can. I don't think it'd be a tough ad. So
Okay,
yeah, it's a good idea. Thanks, Russ.
you bet.
Yeah, this is Dave, and I'll respond. Russ, if you got questions on semiconductors, just call me sometime. I'll be glad to tell you everything you probably didn't want to know about what I'm thinking about semiconductors, but I follow them quite a bit. And I wanted to chiming in here, by the way. It's good to hear. It's good to hear other people talking. But since I stole the floor here, I'm going to stay on it for a second. I wanted to make just a couple of points with that. We're in the middle of earnings season, right? So this is the week for the mega caps, right? So we had three. Facebook reported not so well. They got a lot of nosy news stuff out there. Facebook papers, blah blah blah. You know, make your own choice about how good that is going to affect investing on Facebook. Google and Microsoft also reported, and they had pretty good reports, and both. I think they're outside the expected moves. I know Google was. I'm not sure about Microsoft. But so they're interesting plays. Now tomorrow, I think we have we have Apple, and Apple I think and Amazon tonight is I think it's Amazon tonight, Apple tomorrow. So we'll have most of the mega caps out of the way this week, which kind of are the big 300-pound gorillas for the SPX, SPYs, and in the NASDAQs, right? So anyway, we'll have now information about that kind of group in general. Now, Microsoft and Google were both up. Google's not too much affected by that negative, privacy issues that have been affecting Facebook, which was kind of interesting. But I think the interesting part will be for how Amazon and the retailing group is going to. It's kind of like the bellwether for retailing. So watch that if you've got a lot of interest in retailers. I think that'll be a telling for the rest of the week. Personally, I think we're going to have some challenges on those last two, and they're probably the biggest two. I think that people invested in is Apple. I think is the number one held stock. I'm not sure about Amazon, but it's right up there, and it plays into a couple of the other issues that we've been discussing. Amazon does. Costs for labor, transportation costs, that sort of thing. I think that'll be real interesting when Amazon reports. They should report great revenue because they always do, and it's coming into the last quarter, so they'll be cheerleading the, buy your Christmas presents now kind of thing, because it might be harder to get them in December. So watch those two. I might suggest if. And then we'll have, by the end of the week, we'll have where we, a lot of the impact on the ones that move those two indices. The other point I wanted to make was kind of where I think Russ was going about transportation there. I heard, I was listening to TV Trader today, which is kind of like a news outlet for TD Ameritrade. I think I was trading on Delphian but I listened to that in the background because they just talk about all the stuff that we talk about, kind of every day and this and that. So there was one guy that came on with respect to supply chain that I thought might be an interesting feedback to the group here. The guy was, I think he was a third. It wasn't a TD Ameritrade guy. He was a guest on the show. And he was saying his company looks at all the earnings reports, and they dissect earnings reports, the transcripts, and the conference calls. And he said back in Q2, all of the, there was a lot of news about all the, supply chain issues. Everybody was talking about it. And all the talking heads were mentioned it in their Q2 conference calls. So in Q3, everybody is mentioning it now, and even those that didn't are mentioning in their transcript, their highlights, their kind of like the headwinds kind of column. But he said they weren't, the talking heads were not mentioning it as much of a concern in Q3. He said, however, all the manufacturers that reported good news out so far in Q3 have not gotten good, stock movements, even though they had good quarters. His point was that there's still some latent concern that the market, the pundits, the analysts are still all having with regard to this supply chain issue, whether it's there or not. It seems that was his overall opinion. I thought that might be interesting for we've had a couple of discussions the last couple of weeks on supply chains. I particularly listen to the AMD report every quarter because it's the first bellwether it's the big 300-pound gorilla when it comes to chips. It's the brains, and there's like two companies making brains for all the smart stuff for the most part. Just two. It's Intel and it's AMD. And you could argue that okay, well, there's some other Dragonfly from Broadcom or Qualcomm. They make processors too, but they're smaller gorillas in that what the central processing category is. And AMD did not have, you saw Intel, if you've been following any of the news on chips, you've seen the Intel CEO complaining about it's going to be years before the supply chain issues are subside for semiconductors in his business. Yet AMD did not say that at all. And as a matter of fact, they're at the end of the call when they call in for questions and answers, and all of the analysts call in. There's several questions about, well, we haven't heard you say anything about supply chain. This is Lisa Su, who is their CEO. And is that, where do you see that being a headwind? You reported a great quarter, but how is that? And her response was, well, we have a pretty good, purchasing department, and we've been managing our supply chain fairly well, and we're even managing well into the capacity expansions that we are planning for next year. By the way, AMD has been eating market share from Intel for quarters and quarters, and there's reasons for that, and there's probably reasons I suspect that will continue to happen. So there's two different pictures on where the supply chain issue. And if you look at the stock performance, maybe the market's saying something about what is news and what's not so much news. Just saying. So we'll see how the supply chain affects Amazon. You'd think that would affect Amazon like a lot, since that's what they do, is they get everything from overseas and they finally figure a way to deliver it to your doorstep for no cost for delivery. Well, people think that there's free delivery. Well, I don't know how wrong that can be. We'll see where their costs are going, and it'll be an interesting report to see, is the Amazon report. They hired, I just heard, they're at 1.3 million people to like expedite deliveries this year. A year ago, they only had 800,000. So that's what, 800,000 to 1.3, 500,000. That's a lot of people that they've hired this year compared to last year. They must be paying them more, because they've been saying they're paying them more. The minimum wage went up, and there's like signing bonuses for now to get people. So I don't know how much the labor cost is going to affect the operating costs for Amazon. It'd be interesting to look at and dissect the Amazon review. Anyway, I just thought those might be interesting things for other investors and guys to think about out there. Sorry for rambling on, but it's an interesting season. It's an interesting season. So pay attention to your favorite stocks.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's definitely interesting, points you brought up there. So thank you for sharing that. Anyone else got questions or comments on market overall?
Dan,
Yeah.
Dan Arnold here. Just a couple of comments on what Dave just said. I spoke to an Amazon delivery driver the other day, and this gal's getting $27 an hour, and she's working a lot of overtime as well. So it was she was getting a higher rate than what I anticipated. The other thing, as far as the chip manufacturers go, I was speaking with a guy. He was a senior sales engineer for AMD, who just retired, and he mentioned something that raised my eyebrow, and that was that AMD even before the pandemic and before all these supply chain issues, AMD was already slammed with orders. But that made them happy, of course, because their product was in demand. But they were also kind of dragging their feet because they were trying to basically artificially create the demand by they didn't have any expansion. They weren't buying new factories to increase their chip production. And by keeping the chip production at a stale rate, it was driving the price up. So, when you think of the chip manufacturers, I don't think they're really doing all that much to facilitate, a logistic increase in chip output because they like the demand. They can just ask pretty much whatever they want for those chips. And these companies are going to have to ante up for it, which is also going to increase the inflation rate because that'll be passed on to the consumer. But I just thought those are interesting things from people that I was talking to.
Yeah.
Just I'd pass that on.
Very interesting. So they're.
Oh, and one last thing I heard was on the container ships. Because they've been out in the Bay or off of California for so much time, I heard that a lot of the containers that they're opening up have mold inside, and there's a lot of damaged cargo. So that's another thing.
Yeah. Salty air is not good for a lot of things.
Salty air is not good. No. So,
I can tell you, being on an Iron Navy ship, it's not good out there, for long periods of time. So interesting. So yeah, thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
okay.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor the point that Dan brought up, but I wanted to add just one quick thing is that a lot of these suppliers to other OEMs, they don't build to inventory or what they guess at what the demand is. They build to what their forecasts are from their consumers or their people that they're building for, their OEMs, or if you will. And I would have to say, this is a generic statement, not a just apply to AMD, but others as well, as that they only built to what they were being, forecast, and their orders were coming in from the people that, their customers during the pandemic. And the auto industry was the ones that created most of this biggest problem because they all stopped all their orders. They canceled them. And then the consumer electronics group picked them all up. The same chips that go into iPhones, go into cars, go into everything else. So that particular industry that canceled because they didn't know whether demand was going to come back. Then when it started to ramp, they had to add new orders. Well, those orders were not now forecast, and that inventory was gone. So we have catching up inventory on a lot of suppliers, plus areas of new demand from other sectors that happen a lot in the generic chip business, and all the chips, they're seeing other demand from other areas. And so they were like having to, now that we have a lot of demand and only so much capacity. So it was not so much that they missed it. These guys don't forecast for their customers to give them orders. They wait for their orders. That's kind of the problem that the chips are facing, that people think that they blew it. Well, they only built to what they had orders for. Now they have lots and lots of orders. So, who's got the pricing power, the OEM or the supplier? In my opinion, it's the OEM. Or it's not the OEM, it's the supplier has the pricing power. We'll see, because the chips are playing out right now, and AMD was one of the first big ones to report, and they had a pretty good order. So like I say, anybody that wants to know more about semiconductors, I'll be glad to talk to them and talk about the risks and the benefits that I see. And then I do follow them quite a bit. So, I'd say I'm somewhat knowledgeable, just saying. So
Yeah. Well, it
Anyway,
definitely
good
sounds like
luck.
Dave.
I didn't want to belabor that, but I thought that was an important point to make about a lot of suppliers they build a forecast that what their orders are, not what they're perceiving the general public needs.
Yeah.
Maybe we could have a session from Dave on one of these meetings.
Well, I don't want to take up the Delphian's time, but I'll do that. But if you want, we could have an own semiconductor Zoom session that I'll put together if you want. So call me if you want. I don't want to take Delphian time, but I will if you want me to do it. I'll do it. I'm not afraid.
All right. Well, it sounds like we need more manufacturers out there doing these ships and not just like, the two big boys. So, but yeah, thanks for the insights, Dave. All right. Yep.
I went, my built-in microwave went out last week. And it's one of those built into the kitchen microwave oven combos. And so I went to Nebraska Furniture Mart on Monday night and, wanting to get something that's more computerized, modern and all that, and that matches my other appliances. So me and my girlfriend, we picked one out and are arranging the installation. Anyone want to guess when I'm going to get this thing?
February.
I wish.
Really?
April.
April.
Now, here's the choice. This is not, a desktop cheap Walmart microwave. This is, the installed one that you would have in your house that it comes with the oven and my current one, which was when the house was built, have two separate controls. Now the two microwave and the oven have the same control panel, and the microwave also does some convection cooking. And it's what people want in their houses, right? Not like the desktop, just a cheap microwave. And if you're going to spend that money, you go to the appliance store and you're going to want something that looks good in your house, matches your other appliance. You're not going to take just what happens to be in stock, right? Just because it's there and this is what you can get. They have a few things in stock. But then the guy quoted, it'll be April before this thing arrives and gets installed. Wow. It's a GE microwave oven combo. Right. So, I mean, this supply chain thing is very real. If you have not done your Christmas shopping, you might want to start.
Yeah. Well, so are you going to get Walmart to fill in, the $50?
So the microwave quit working, but the oven works. And we just we did go to Walmart and got a cheap desktop $50 microwave that we can just heat up things in and get by for a few months. We'll get by. But in terms, and then, like the $50 microwave will, give it to, a college student friend or something who can use it in their apartment. Right. But, we'll get by till April, but we weren't going to just take anything that was available, because now you're talking about something that, they have to come out, install it. They have to check the electricity, make sure it's got enough power, and may have to do some cabinet work. And, you want something that matches your other stuff and looks good, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to just have to wait.
Wow.
Till April.
That's 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So Sadir, you said part of it's working, part of it's not. So I'm not trying to troubleshoot your issue here, but the magnetron that is like the cooking part is usually what goes in microwaves. And my guess is you could probably get a replacement part from a repair guy. GE's pretty popular, and get the magnetron if that's the issue. It's about $100, and I'll bet you could get it a lot quicker because it's a part that goes. It's not the whole item; it's just the part, and they probably have some. You might check that, especially if you like the one that's built in and it's like looks nice and everything. Might be cheaper to get the repair part than to get a whole nother unit. Just saying.
Yeah, maybe, but we're at the point where this particular microwave and oven was put in when the house was built in 2003. So in our purchasing decision, we're down the road where, well, 17 years, we might as well get a new one, right?
Hmm.
And might as well get something we like and looks good and all that kind of stuff. So that will hopefully last another 17 or 20 years. Right? So, but yeah, good suggestion. I may look into that. But I thought that April delivery would interest people. That supply chain thing is very real.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, enjoy the Walmart one.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, we're gonna move on to the next thing. It's great conversations. What the question was last week was about modifying earnings. So I did find out you guys aren't getting this email. So it's an email, but we're gonna try and make sure it goes out. This is like the weekly email that gets sent. And apparently you guys aren't getting it, but it lays out all the trades for the week. So it's a
Yeah,
great,
we are not getting that.
yeah, that's not cool. So
I get the daily one. I get the daily one. I
Yeah.
trade it every day, but I don't get the weekly.
yeah, this is the best one. I mean, you kind of plan your week, you know.
Yeah,
So-
it would be nice.
We spent a lot of, I know Shawn has spent hours, making this thing look good. And yeah, we'll try and make sure that gets out Sunday. I'm not sure why it didn't get pushed to you guys, but we are getting it and I love it. So anyway, so
Hey, Josh,
yeah,
it's Lee here. Hey,
Yeah.
do we have to do anything on our side to get that?
no, it's us.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no, this is Shawn. This is Shawn. Sorry. Yeah, no, it's on our end. We thought, like Josh said, we were getting it, so we thought everybody else was getting it, but it's just an issue with our email service that sends out that it just didn't get sent out. So we do apologize. And one note too, real quick on this email here, or on what Josh is showing, the email comes out Sunday at noon, noon Eastern time. And then the link's in your email. It's just a link you click on. But when you do click on that link, if you click on it on like a Tuesday, it's going to update for the next, I think it's either 5 or 7 days. So it updates for the earnings that are going to be coming out for the next 5, let's just say 5 days. So if you open this email on 10/27 for PHM, which is today, if you open it tomorrow, PHM and VM is going to drop off, and then 2 more might add on depending on the further out that it goes. So it is a dynamic type link that would populate.
That is nice.
Just a side note. Yeah. So kind of like Josh said, I think Sundays are good. We picked Sunday because it's a day everybody hopefully has a little time in the evening to check it out, and then it kind of gives you a heads up of, hey, iRobot's coming out this week with earnings as a bearish runner or whatever, and kind of gives you an idea of maybe where you want to focus your time. And then we've added, Joe, Josh, and I worked on this, adding some of these other little columns in here that give you some good information in the previous quarter versus this quarter and where the IV is. So it's a really some good information there if you kind of dig into it and kind of look at it. So.
Question.
Yeah.
Question. Any reason this couldn't be under one of the alerts? That's on, that's on the application, that's on the, main page?
Not that I know of. No, I mean, it's a good suggestion for sure. We had it constructed as an email, and you can actually construct something similar within the earnings section. While Josh is showing his part, I'll see if I can pull it up. To pull up this specific link, you can't do. I mean, to pull up this specific page, you can't do so. Only via that link, but you can pull up something similar within the calendar. And like I said, I'll try to, after Josh is done, I'll see if I can show you.
Yeah, I think the appropriate place would be under the earnings plan. So, maybe there's a toggle where you can have the weekly.
The weekly, right?
Yeah, and, or if you want to go to the big plan, that might be.
That would be helpful, especially if this is dynamic and will change on a daily basis, so that we don't have to keep going back and finding the email.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, this is a lot more usable than that big earnings plan, I think, as far as planning, the other one's so big. Okay. So I pulled this up just to, say, okay, well, let's just take one case here, like United Rentals. So I went into the calendar and, I pulled up the bullish runners I sorted by price, and the first one I saw was URI. So, for URI, people are basically asking, how do you modify, and retest things? So basically, my default parameters is what we use, 25% of max profit, max risk, 100, 60 days. And then, from there, I have the strikes, one strike from current close, and this is for the bull put, and then the lower standard deviation. So from there, and I did the analysis, and, it's got 100% win rate or whatever. So from there, if you're going in and, you only have a 45 day, that's your next expiration, then you want to test that, then you can do that here. Just by changing that day, and, if it's 59, I wouldn't even worry about retesting it, but, if it's significant distance from, 60, I would definitely test it and make sure it's still working properly. The other things you can do here is also, we tested for 50% profit. So, so I would also look at that. So still pretty good. And then the other thing, I know people are just kind of interested in, if they want to change, the setup. I know Winslow talked about, moving it more aggressive, or, maybe changing it, just to see, okay, I just want it one strike below, just to see how things do. So that's how you go through and do this analysis. The trick is, okay, finding, that symbol that you're looking to test here. So that's done with the input. So if it's within the next month, you won't have to change this. If it's further out, then you'll have to, move the days out. So just want to review that kind of quickly. Is there questions on that, how to do that?
I guess this is Winslow. Yeah, I guess I'll do that to be more in the money or whatever, or having smaller difference in the strike prices. Yeah, I think I can stare at long enough.
Yeah. So this one, like, I just moved it to one strike above instead of below, and
Right.
it changed quite a bit. So
Yeah.
Yeah. So the break even, the big thing with that, I think moving the strikes around, like, you kind of want the break even on your side. It helps. Anyway, you have a question?
Josh, I got a question. Dan here.
Dan.
On the, let's see, you had originally it was a one strike below, I think it was a standard deviation.
Yeah.
Is there a delta on there, on that drop down?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I didn't see that. There was a delta. Okay, so with the standard deviation, how do you figure out the standard deviation? You just go down like 16 delta, or?
Yeah, it's going to be right around there. You can always pull up the options table too. For that symbol, and it'll have the standard deviation on the appropriate
Okay.
expiration. So if we did URI.
There's no way to limit the risk to a dollar amount, is there?
No.
Okay.
Okay, I see yeah, that's quite a range. That gives the range.
Yeah, so the lower would be 311.
311.
Yeah, so it's one above, so you'd take the 320.
Oh, I see. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so this one wouldn't, so yeah, it's a good example because, this one, I think it comes up in a day or two. So you have 52 days, so, there's not a big difference, if you keep all the parameters the same, taking that instead of, this one for 87, so.
Yeah, it still comes out to about, looks like it's about close to a 16 delta anyway.
Yeah, it's right around there. So,
Yeah.
okay, any other questions on this? Hmm? All right, well, I'll give it over to Shawn. You got cram it all in 15 minutes, Shawn.
Yeah, I got it. No problem. How's everybody doing?
All right.
Very good.
Yeah. Yeah, glad to be back. So yeah, I missed last Wednesday's call, but I know Josh mentioned it on the opening segment there. We did go to Iceland with my wife and our neighbors, and it was a great trip. I don't know if anybody on the call has been to Iceland before, but it was a great trip. I mean, the country itself is beautiful with a big variety of landscapes and you know, different things like that. You know, you go from the ocean to the northern lights to glaciers to volcanoes, so you have a decent variety of landscapes you can pick from when you go visit there. And you know, one interesting note that one gentleman told us when we were on one of the tours was that Iceland itself is actually the size or relative to the size of Kentucky, which I found was interesting because, you know, it obviously seems pretty massive when they're there. And then, but they have, you know, only 10% of the population. So Kentucky's population, I think, recently was like 4.5 million or so, and Iceland has a population of about 400,000. So pretty interesting disparity between population and landmass. Obviously, a lot of the land on Iceland is probably, you know, uninhabitable, if you will, just based on the fact that it's made of big glaciers and, you know, really cold when you obviously head up to the north. But, you know, as far as a place to visit, I would say if you haven't been there, it's a good place to go. People are really friendly. They do speak a different language. However, most people there, most citizens there did learn English, you know, starting I think in like first or second grade. So, you know, most everyone knows English and, you know, are very happy to help and happy to speak it. So, yeah, a good place to visit, either probably in summer. Summer probably more like Alaska, I believe, where, you know, I think the sun might go down in the summer for, you know, 30 minutes or an hour or so, but for the most part, it's daylight, you know, most of the time in the summer. When we were there, you could definitely see the difference in the sun coming up, you know, to the lower southern part of the sky. It was interesting to see the arc in the sun be so low. I think noon, we had still a really big shadow at noon, which was interesting because here, you know, obviously in Florida, we usually have the sun almost directly over us, you know, and in the summer, winter's a little bit different, but you could see some disparities like that, which was just kind of interesting to know. So has anybody on the call been there before?
No, but I think I'd like to go now.
Well, good. Yeah. Send me a postcard, right?
Right.
No, but it was definitely, yeah, it was definitely cool. Like I said, we were there obviously recently, which is not full winter yet. It was cool. It was cold. I mean, it was like 40 degrees, I think, but it was really windy, which was not normal is what they told us. I mean, we had some wind gusts, I think like 40, 50 mile an hour for a couple of days. But you know, all that aside, I think just the variety of landscapes was really cool to see.
I would think they'd have good beer, because what else is there to do there?
Right? Yeah.
Did,
Yeah, I'd have to say I probably went to a couple pubs. It's possible,
Shawn,
but yeah,
did you see the Aurora Borealis? You enjoyed that?
we did see that. Yeah, it was really cool. It was a little faint, you know, but we did have 2 days where it was really clear, so we were able to be able to see that, which was really cool.
Yeah, last year, 2020 March was my plan to go to Iceland
Oh,
to
okay.
enjoy the you know, northern lights, and everything shut down. And now it is on top of my bucket list. I am planning on going next March.
Okay, yeah, that would be perfect. Yeah, I mean, it does change, and you know, obviously with the COVID restrictions and things like that, that's one of the countries you have to, you know, test, get a rapid test done prior to leaving the U.S., and then you do have to get a rapid or, you know, a COVID test prior to leaving and coming back to the U.S. So quite interesting that you have to do it both ways, but a little inconvenient, but not that big of a deal.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll share real quick just to show you guys this one picture. It's kind of faint. I sent this to somebody within Delphian. Let me see if I can find it where I just had it. So this, you can kind of see here, you should be able to see my screen, yeah? You can kind of see here a little bit of the shading there of the northern lights. This is just, I don't know why it's so blurry, maybe because it came from my phone, but that's kind of the extent of what we'd seen, a bunch of hazes like that.
I heard in March, April, you see the most.
It's possible. Yeah, I know it's definitely relative to kind of how the magnetic field and how the field is moving. But they do have an app, obviously have an app for everything now, but they do have an app, I think, where you can kind of see the different fluctuations of the magnetic field and how it's flowing, you know, in the sky. And then that will obviously give you a good, you know, sample of what you might see that night, you know, if you go out, and kind of give you an idea of if you should go try to do it or not.
Did you swim
So,
in the hot springs?
we did, yeah, we did do that as well. So we were able to swim in the hot springs, and they do have a bunch of really cool stuff like that as well. So, and I know this is kind of going off topic, so if anybody wants me to stop, please tell me. But I know, but it is one of the big things with Iceland, right? They run their whole country, the power grid essentially is run off of all of the geothermal energy that they have from underneath the ground. So, you know, their electricity is derived from that. So they do have a lot of hot springs because the ground, some spots in the ground is so warm. So hot springs is a pretty big attraction there. So we did go to a couple of those where, you know, you're in the springs and it might be, you know, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, let's say, and then the air outside is 40. But, you know, it is really cool to be able to use that energy and kind of feel what they're doing with the country. So, yeah. You know, and they also cook, you know, so they do cook bread and fish and things like that just right underneath the ground. So they'll put it in a pot, cover it, bury it, maybe not even half a foot below the surface. And the ground is so hot already that just that shallow that cooks the food for them. And so they don't need to use any other external electricity to cook that food. They can cook it right there in the ground. So
Are there
pretty
flights
interesting. Yeah.
right from Tampa? Direct flights?
I would say Tampa is possible. Yeah, we flew directly from Orlando, so Orlando straight to Iceland nonstop. So
Oh,
yeah, we can talk about it in more detail, push
all
before
right,
you
okay,
get ready.
all right.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'm
you know, if
glad.
anybody's interested, I have a bunch of pictures too that I can
Oh,
share. I
wow.
don't want to. So.
I'm so glad you did.
Thanks, Shawn. That was nice.
Oh yeah, no problem. So yeah, and you know, other than that, there was a couple things that, you know, we did want to talk about. One thing that I got a couple emails on from last meetings. The last meeting was, you know, to do with the earnings trade. So we did have a question between like our bullish pre-runners and our bullish runners and the difference between the two. You know, just briefly, we can talk about it more in detail next week. But, you know, as we know, the bullish pre-runners, you know, really take advantage of the anticipation of earnings from a particular company. And we back tested it just based on that trend prior to the earnings announcement, the stock price trend prior to the earnings announcement. So when we back test it, you know, 20 days out up until the earnings announcement. And for our bullish pre-runners, those stocks typically move up in price coming into the announcement. So some stocks, you know, like you might see it more often in like a Tesla or an Apple or Microsoft, where people just want to buy the company, they believe in the company, and they think no matter what, you know, they're probably going to have good earnings. So you see that really push up prior to the earnings announcement. You know, that's our bullish pre-runner. Our bullish runner really takes into account the fact that typically, you know, no matter what the earnings announcement is, people still want to be in that stock. So, you know, it could be a combination of things where, you know, there are investors that are exiting out of a position prior to earnings because, you know, they don't want to take that uncertainty into an account, so they get out of the position, but they still want to be long the stock. So then they're going to probably get back in, you know, after the earnings announcement. So you have these companies that, again, you know, earnings announcement happens, it could be good or bad, but people still want to be in that company irregardless of what had just occurred. And so that's where you're going to get that bullish runner. The stock price is going to move up a day after the earnings announcement and keep going higher. And that's what we've back tested with our bullish runners. And, you know, I know a side note of this, and Josh and I had went back and forth on this a couple of times previously, was your bullish runners, you know, you have your earnings announcement. And if your earnings announcement is after the market closes, then the entire next day is really still almost considered the earnings move day. You know, the stock hasn't had a chance to make a move based off of the earnings announcement yet. So that next day, the stock is going to move up or down and be pretty volatile based on the news from the earnings. So really, we're holding off on that day. We're not trading it on that day. But if it does qualify as a bullish runner, then the following business day or the following trading day is going to be the day that we want to get into it as a bullish runner. And then we think the stock should continue to go higher based on the back testing that we've done. So that's a quick, quick differentiation between the two, the bullish pre-runners and the bullish runners. Kind of quick, but does anybody have any questions on the difference between those two? No. All right, cool. And then one quick question. I'll go over a little more detail next Wednesday on break even. But really quick, does anyone use break even? And if they do, a break even price, and if anyone does, can they please just briefly explain, why they use it or why they think it's important? Anyone?
Well, it's a leading question. I mean, I use it all the time. I'm almost guessing we all do. And it kind of tells you where our ultimate risk is. I'm not sure where you're going with the question, but that's how I would give
Yeah.
you a brief answer.
No, that's exactly it, Dave. I mean, essentially, like you said, it's a really important number or numbers to use when you're dealing with trades, when you're dealing with your actual money. And I'm just not sure if a lot of people use it or if they know how to derive it. Some of the trades that we have, some of these option trades can be a little complex, but it's very important to know where your break even is on those trades because, like you said, that gives you an idea of, where's my risk lie and where's my profit lie, right? Two different trades we've done. So we've done the bullish pre-runners we had mainly as long calls, for the previous quarters, and still some kind of intertwined in some of these trades. And then now we have the bull put spreads, but two different types of break even. I mean, two different setups, let's say, for break even prices when you're looking at those trades, because those trades are two different types of trades. So, break even on both of those is really important. And, I just want to make sure that if you're not using them, that you try to start using them. We'll try to incorporate them in your analysis and then figure out, okay, well, if the stock moves here or there, I'm losing money, I'm making money, or I'm still kind of in my safe zone. There's some really key factors to take out of that. So next week, what I'll do is I'll pull up some examples, maybe even compare and contrast, a long call trade with a bull put trade and show you where those break evens lie and show you, the importance of knowing kind of where those numbers are. And then even on our, non-movers or our vol crush trades, those iron butterfly trades, we have two break even points, right? So now we have two different break even setups, one above the current price of the stock and one below. So again, two separate points that are critically important to your trading that, give you an idea by just, if you're seeing Microsoft trading on a ticker and you know where the Microsoft trade is, you can say, hey, Microsoft's at 325, my break even was at 320, so I'm outside of that range now, and as long as I'm protected, I'm okay. I'm still losing money, but I'm okay. So you kind of get an idea really quickly by just looking at the price of where you might stand with your current position that you have.
Yeah, and break even with respect to time might also be something you want to cover while you're doing that, because the time left in the trade kind of, is pretty critical too, compared, depending upon the strategy you're using, et cetera, with the break even. So your break even can occur quickly, or it could wait for time to pass before it becomes more of a factor.
Most definitely. Yeah, that's exactly right. And what Dave speaks about is a perfect example of, a lot of times in the past when I would speak about break even, you say, yeah, this is your break even price, at expiration. So you're trading these January options. Here's your break even if it's January 20th right now, right? So, you gotta kind of take that into consideration, and that time value is a decent factor there. And the break even, the trade value can adjust a bit, even if it goes above or below your break even. It might not be exactly at your max loss or your max profit, depending on how much time value is left on the trade. So that is another important factor, to take into consideration when you're trading options. So yeah, just get some questions prepared if you have any, or if you have any things you want to talk about regarding the break-even prices. And what I'll do is I'll get some together for next Wednesday. Use a couple different examples. We have some great ways that we can check that within Delphian and within the virtual portfolio. So I'll give you guys an update on that, or kind of go over that with you guys. I have a couple trades that I still need to add into my virtual portfolio for when I was gone, based on those, earnings trades that we just previously got last week. So once I have those in there, that'll give me a better indication too of where some of the virtual portfolios sit. So I'll give an update on that one, on a couple of those different, sectors or those different earnings trades next week. And I'll have that for everybody as well. And then like Dave said, there were a couple trades last night that had come out. Microsoft was one of them, regarding, I think, a volatility crush trade. It did spike up today. It is above that expected move, Dave. We're sitting around 325. I think 320 was the spot of the outer band when you look at the buying, which calls for protection. So that one did make a pretty big move up today, up about 5% on Microsoft. So like Dave said, though, there's a couple other companies coming out today, tomorrow, to keep a watch out for. None that I believe are on our list for our earnings trades, but still some good ones to watch and to follow, and to kind of do some analysis on yourself if you want to do so. So if nobody has any questions for me, I'm going to pass it back to Josh, and we'll be speaking next Wednesday.
All right, well, thank you, Shawn, and thank you everyone for attending. And we'll do it again next week. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.